Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome students to another lecture of political leadership and communication. Today is the second last lecture of this course particularly, and we're going to discuss about mostly the leaders and we're going to analyze their leadership skills, or basically place whatever skills we have learned till now in terms of leadership or in terms of communication. We're going to place these skills among these leaders, and we're going to analyze that particularly which leader has a dominant trait of which leadership, or which particularly style of leadership basically worked for them. Okay, now mostly we will going to be taking political leaders across the globe, which is whether it is the president of USA, or whether it is particularly the the president of Ukraine. All these particularly global leaders, along with certain kind of leaders who have a mastery in not just about being a political leader in terms of a nation or of a country, but also we're going to analyze certain kind of spiritual leaders, particularly in regard to have a comparative analysis between people who lead the country, and particularly leaders who actually have something different in the regard where they are able to connect not just with their own country but across the globe. Okay, like they have good influencing power across the globe, in the sense that let's just take an example of Mahatma Gandhi. Now he had a kind of an impression which was laid across the globe, whether it was in Africa, whether it was in America as well. Also, we are going to discuss about, in a very brief manner, about Swami Vivekananda. Now, he was also the one before Mahatma Gandhi actually, who had a great impact on, the population of not just India, but also across the globe. We know that he gave a speech in particularly America, and which became very, very famous. And that is the reason, we're going to compare leaders who are not just, politically associated, but also who have over the period of time tried to, evolve the society on the basis of not for their own good, or not for their own, popularism, or we can say for the vote share, but eventually to transform the society, for the benefit of the society. They have basically used certain kind of qualities they had, and a kind of, leadership which was not based on populism, in order to have a kind of an impression across the globe. Okay, so then particularly it is important to take up examples, whether it is the prime minister or president of any particular country, or these kind of spiritual leaders who just did not try to transform the society within their own country, but also had an impact on the larger population of the globe. Okay, so today's class will be mostly about a comparative analysis, as well as an analysis of what kind of leadership traits or qualities particularly leaders across the globe has possessed, which have made them popular, or which have made them a leader, of how people have basically trusted them, or what was the basis of why people were able to basically connect with them, whether it was through a vote share or whether it was through their personal connect, is what the today's class is going to be. Okay, so let's start with the first leader we are going to analyze is Zelensky. You have all heard about him. He's basically the president of Ukraine. So, Volodymyr Zelensky's leadership style, it is basically a case study in particularly terms of crisis-driven transformational leadership. Now, if you remember in your previous classes, we have discussed that, what are the leadership skills we should imbibe, and when it comes to issues and challenges, how does the leader basically is able to overcome all these challenges is, important. Now, if you remember, then why in the previous class when we were talking about the issues and the challenges, we discussed about how a leader reacts in a crisis situation. Okay, so crisis management, or for that matter, we took an example, if you remember, of Bhopal gas tragedy. Okay, now how did the government failed? How did the corporation failed in order to protect the people? Okay, so that is exactly how we will be analyzing Zelensky also, particularly his leadership in a crisis mode or a module. Why? Because before this war happened between Ukraine and Russia, there were very few of us who actually knew him as a leader. Okay, and the kind of qualities and traits which he has shown basically depicts how a leader in a crisis situation actually reacts. So let's just take up this case study. Zelensky is the president of Ukraine and has emerged as a globally recognized political figure, particularly in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Okay, his leadership has drawn attention from its communicative effectiveness, emotional intelligence, and transformational qualities under extreme national crisis. Okay, so Zelensky, who is the president of Ukraine, as I told you, that before Russia's invasion in Ukraine, there were less number of people who actually knew him, and particularly his leadership style. So, it is important to analyze his leadership, particularly on those terms of his communicative effectiveness or emotional intelligence or transformational qualities, particularly in extreme situations like war. Okay, so these are basically all those qualities which we discussed, whether it is through communicative skills or the leadership skills. Okay, the background of Zelensky is, if most of you know very well, but it is basically he was a comedian and a television personality, and he did not had any formal political background, and that is why when we talk about some leaders who have gone to become presidents and prime ministers, you must have heard that people generally do this narratives or try to have an impact on the people. Why? Because all these people who were whether they were a comedian or a television artist, or for that matter people who were belonging to the lower section, like the PM of this country, who was once a tea seller. Okay, all these people who have basically from the lower strata have tried to become the leaders of this country. They have much more impelling impact on the people than people actually belonging from the political class. Why? Because they have used their hard work in order to overcome or influence people based on their communication, based on their skills of emotional intelligence, and that is why we are going to also study Zelensky in that domain. Okay, so let's just see how about his leadership style and how was he able to tackle this crisis situation. Okay, he's a transformational leadership in times of war. Now there are two kinds of leadership. One is transformational, one is transactional. Okay, a transformational leadership is basically talking about personality traits where a person or a leader tries to transform the society not for his own betterment or to gain votes, but exactly for the society itself. Okay, so Zelensky has been placed within the transformational leader. Why? Because at the time of this war, he has been able to support the country rather than leaving the country and fleeing because there was an attack. Okay, so this shows certain kind of courage and support for his own country. Okay, so transformational leaders are known for inspiring and motivating followers beyond immediate self-interest, often in the pursuit of collective mission. Okay, so in the Zelensky's case particularly, this is most evident in his wartime leadership, where he has consistently appealed to the Ukrainian people's sense of identity, sovereignty and resilience. So as I told you that he is regarded as a transformational leader. Why? Because he was able to connect to the people at the time of war, whether it is emotional support, whether it is showing courage that he did not flee the country, or whether it is basically standing with the people at all. Okay, so this is basically shows a kind of strength and courage within your leader, that when your leader is standing for you, then it basically gives a strength to the people as well, especially during crisis situation. Okay, the next point within this is vision and national unity. Now generally we see that how leaders are basically being separated by managers because of their clarity about their vision, their goal and their ability to take risks as well. Okay, so Zelensky has been placed within this quality of vision and unity particularly. Okay, so his central vision has been preservation of Ukrainian sovereignty and defense of democracy and promotion of a European identity for Europe. In the face of Russian aggression, he has repositioned Ukraine not just as a geographical entity but as a symbol of democratic resistance. Now this is very important to understand that it is not just defending your own country, but the narrative which you are basically trying to spread in terms of whether you are standing against say a tyrannical ruler, and that is why you're trying to promote certain kind of democratic ideals, that you should not be curbed by any particular dictator or any particular authoritarian country. Okay, so this shows resilience, this shows courage, not just for the people but for the world, that this particular country will not settle or will not be curbed by any aggression. Okay, so then Zelensky's vision and his strength towards establishing certain kind of sovereignty for his nation is basically believed to have come out, that because we all know that at one point of time it was USSR and all these countries were a part of that. Once they got disintegrated, in order to establish their sovereignty, in order for their development, and Zelensky has been one kind of a mascot promoting that kind of identity. Okay. Next is inspirational motivation. Now, if you see that particularly Zelensky is, generally he comes on to the media platform and tries to use certain kind of, speeches in order which are very motivational. Okay, so his refusal to flee from Kiev despite threats of his life captured a famously in his statement, which was that I need ammunition, not a ride. So that is why he basically appealed to the world that, you should not particularly give me assistance in, fleeing this country, but I would need ammunition, that is I would need guns and power in order to fight such a tyrannical ruler, which he basically considers Russia to be. Okay, so I need ammunition, not a right, has become a symbol of defiance and unity, reinforcing his role as a leader who embodies the very struggle of his nation. Okay, so it is basically in times where you mostly see that the presidents and the prime ministers in terms of crisis generally fly from their country. You saw a recent example of Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. When there was basically an unrest and riots, she flew from her own country. And similarly in Sri Lanka also, the president of Sri Lanka flew when you had riots and people occupied the presidential space. So then you see particularly that leaders generally fly away or leave their own country in crisis situation, but Zelensky has basically proved the other way around, and he has stood there and basically supported the sovereignty and unity of his country, also through an emotional and motivational appeals by using such kind of slogans that I need ammunition, not a ride. Okay. So this is basically a kind of, a quality of a transformational leader in times of war. So we are basically trying to assess or analyze Zelensky in the crisis situation particularly here. Okay. Second is he's a charismatic leader, he's a symbolic leader and also a servant leader. Now these three are basically qualities in a leadership, and we'll see how it has affected his role in assessing particularly his skills during crisis. Okay, so his communication skills earned the background in media and performance. We all know that he was a comedian, and that is why he know how to basically have a communication with people, or what to say or when to say. Okay, which has enabled him to effectively address both domestic and international audiences. He employs emotive language or emotional language, visual symbolism, and personal narrative to frame Ukraine's fight as one of the moral clarity and democratic values. Okay, so particularly Zelensky, why he is able to communicate emotionally as well as symbolically, because he has certain kind of background of media and he knows what to say and when to say. Okay, the kind of symbolism he uses is that you might have seen on television whenever he comes to answer the world or ask for help on the media screens. He's always wearing a military uniform. Okay, now he could have generally worn a suit, but particularly he uses military uniform in order to show that he stands with the military, he stands with the people in order to make them in order to make Ukraine a safe space. And that is why it is used as a symbol in order to denote strength, in order to denote that there is somebody standing behind you, the person will not leave you in the crisis situation. So that is why his symbolism also promotes his a kind of an emotional appeal to the people. Okay, his olive green military attire during the public appearances and video messages established a visual representation of the shared struggle and solidarity with Ukrainian people. The decision to address global parliaments and institutions like US Congress, EU, which is European Union Parliament, and UN, United Nations, while appearing modest and emotionally charged with deliberative use of symbolic politics. Okay, so now you see that another style, as I keep telling you, that it is not just a verbal communication which have an influence on the people, it is also the use of symbols which basically influence people. So here is one of a very important example. Okay, in addition to this, there is something called servant leadership, which is basically you are a servant of the population and you will serve them as a servant in either in times of war or whenever they need them. So particularly this style of leadership has been promoted by Zelensky in emphasizing on putting the needs of the Ukrainian people first. His speeches often reflect humility and gratitude towards the soldiers and civilians alike. He frames himself not as a heroic leader but as a representative of a collective struggle, frequently highlighting the sacrifices of ordinary Ukrainians. So it is not just that he represents himself that I am the hero, I am the leader, I am standing with you. Apart from that, he basically tries to come up with an emotional appeal and tells to the world that how particularly Russia is trying to dominate it and how people are suffering constantly because Russia is not stopping the war. So then it becomes a symbol that Zelensky is basically a symbol of a democratic leader who believes in peaceful coexistence, and that is why he is always supporting or having an emotional connect with those people who have lost their lives, rather than presenting himself as a kind of a hero of everybody. Okay, the second skill which he has used is the narrative framing. Okay, the narration, how you narrate any particular event. Okay, so Zelensky utilizes storytelling and emotional appeal to mobilize both domestic and international audiences. So as I told you, how you tell a story. Okay, whether you tell a story from a frame of emotional angle, whether you tell a story from the frame of say a political angle, as we discussed in earlier classes also, that any particular event can be narrated with say fighting for democratic rights, and the same event can be also predicted or narrated in the form of a national security element here. Okay, so that is exactly what Zelensky is also doing, the storytelling skill particularly. He has framed frames a war not just as a battle between good and evil, but between democracy and tyranny, thereby universalizing Ukraine's cause. Now, if you remember, during 1960s and 70s, there was a drive for democratization, which basically believed that all these colonies which were basically taken up by countries like whether it was Britain, whether it was France, they were basically tried to free themselves from this colonialism and imperialism. Why? Because there was a democratic drive, because it was believed that every country should be sovereign and it should be the people of that country who would decide its fate, rather than any particular external country doing that. Okay, so that is why when this drive happened, you have democracy being established in mostly across the world. So that is why this war has been narrated not from the point of who is good or who is bad or who is evil, but from the point of view that how democracy should also be established. Okay, next important quality is basically strategic political communication. So Zelensky's leadership is, he is a mastery of political communication, of course, because one, he has been on social media platforms himself, he was a comedian, but also that, his speeches particularly garner international support and pressure foreign governments to take into action. His speech, if you hear him talking about, you will generally see that, he has also criticized certain countries for not helping Ukraine at times when he's, trying to stand against a tyrant or trying to basically support his country for democracy and peaceful existence. So, countries who are not supporting him, also he has tried to basically reach out to every leader of every country in order for support. So, this is basically internationally he has used speeches to influence people. So, it is not just about your country whom you are going to influence or stand with them, but also globally you are basically trying to revive everybody's, emotional side as well. Okay. So, what is his global advocacy is that his messages are marked by clarity. As I told you that, during when we were doing the issues of what are there in communication and leadership, there has to be a clarity of message. So basically his, communication is marked by clarity, it is marked by emotional appeal and strategic and repetition of democratic values. Okay, so he has used these kind of phrases that we will not give up and we will not lose, we will fight till the end, at sea, in the air, we will continue fighting for a land at whatever cost, we will fight in the forest, in the fields and on the shores and in the streets. Okay, now this particular communication or this particular slogan similar to this was used by Winston Churchill in UK during the Second World War, where he was basically trying to tell or motivate the people that we will particularly be fighting whether it is in air, forest, land and at whatever cost till the time we don't win. Okay, so these kind of slogans have been used in order to not just establish certain kind of sovereignty or solidarity among the people, but also to show the world that a small country like Ukraine can stand against a big tyrant like Russia as well. Okay. The last is resilience and emotional intelligence. Zelensky exemplifies a modern and transformational leader who merges into a symbolic action, which is basically, as I gave you an example of his particularly military uniform, his emotional intelligence by using of slogans and digital savvy to lead under a precedented conditions. Okay, his leadership transcends traditionally bureaucratic models, relying instead on moral authority, public engagement and powerful national narration. Okay, so this is exactly what particularly his leadership has over the period of time evolved, especially during the crisis situation, how he has been an transformative leader, how he has used symbolism, how he has used his previous background of with media and digitalization in order to establish a certain kind of narrative for the world as well. Okay, so this was basically Zelensky's style of leadership and how his skills have been analyzed during war situations. We will also be picking another particular leader which is also a president of say United States of America, who is particularly Donald Trump at now. So okay, So the next particularly leader whom we are going to analyze is Donald Trump's leadership style, which is basically based on populism, disruption and media mastery. Now you see that Trump particularly has been very different leader when it comes to leading a particular country, especially America. Okay, he is one of his kind in America, and being a president who has not had a background from politics, or for that matter any social events, okay, or any political family. He was basically a businessman, and he has led to become the president of United States. His particular leadership is led on populism, that he wants to be a popular leader, and that is why the skills he has adopted to do that is not just about through democratic consensus, or for that matter taking everybody together. His particularly leadership style denotes more of how he deals with normal citizens on day-to-day basis through social media like Twitter. We always see Donald Trump always posting something on Twitter. Though we see both angles of it, there is criticism as well as there is support. But exactly how his leadership is very different from, say, Zelensky's or Barack Obama's is what we are going to see today. Particularly, Trump has been regarded not as a transformational leader, but as a transactional leader. So, as I told you, transactional leader is somebody who tries to build his leadership on populism, who tries to build his leadership on some kind of his own selfish interest, and also who basically believes in his own charisma, okay, rather than transforming the world. It is more important that he as a leader stays popular among the masses, okay. So, Donald Trump is the 45th president of United States in 2017 and 2021. He has been re-elected now, but we are going to analyze his presidentialship from 2017 to 2021. And he represents a significant departure from traditional American presidential leadership, as I told you. With no prior experience in public office or military, Trump ascends to power through a campaign that championed anti-establishment populism, nationalism and media spectacle, okay. So, that is why I said that, Trump is particularly a leader who is a populist leader who believes in ideology of nationalism, that is America first, and also who basically believes in certain kind of media spectacle, okay. That is, media should portray him constantly in the good books of the people, and that is why he keep disregarding certain kind of reports which come either through newspapers or media channels as saying fake news also, okay. His leadership style often described as disruptive, transactional, as I told you, and populist, redefining the contours of political communication, executive authority and party politics in United States, okay. So, his leadership is particularly why it is disruptive. We are going to see that. Transactional, I already told you, based on his own personal interest. Populist, also we are going to analyze that how he has basically tried to portray him as a popular leader in terms of what political communication happens, how executive authority is basically playing an important role here, because mostly we have seen that whenever in presidential elections of USA, there's always a debate which happens between the opponents, and that is basically broadcasted, okay. But when some particularly a leader becomes a president, in US particularly, he has it's in his own will to whom he wants to basically say put in his own cabinet. That has nothing to do with the Senate or the Parliament of USA. It is his own discretion, and generally we have seen in this particular period from 2017 to 2021, Trump has used his own power and has used his own capabilities to basically appoint people who were trying to portray him as a popular leader, or had allegiance toward him rather than contradicting him, okay. So, that is why he has used his executive authority to deploy certain kind of people who believe in loyalty rather than challenging him, okay. So, then we are going to see the leadership skills he has basically endured in order to become a populist leader, okay. So, a populist leadership and anti-establishment rhetoric. So if you remember, while we were doing about communicative skills, there was a methodology called rhetoric communication, which basically believes on a person's, his actions, his communication, his style of, dressing, or the person himself. So basically, Trump has tried to, establish a certain kind of a populist leader through this rhetorical method. Okay. So his leadership style is best understood through the framework of populist leadership, which construct a binary between a virtuous people and a corrupt elite. Okay, so basically he has tried to build society on the basis of that, some people are virtuous and that is why, they should behave in some manner, and how to basically curb this corrupt elite. So what happens in US is particularly, there is lobbying happening. Okay, lobbying basically means that there are certain people who controls which policies there are there. For example, there are community of Jews who has majority in Senate. Okay, so then there are the lobbies. These are the certain kind of bureaucrats who have, the lobbying is done in America particularly. And whenever any particular bill or policy is being laid, because they are in majority, they are able to influence that. Okay, so the Trump administration particularly has been against this and has tried to basically deconstruct this kind of a narrative. Okay, so in terms of establishing himself as a populist leader, he has used people-centric messaging. If you remember that I was telling that now communication is not involving media or public opinion in general to portray their messaging, but what they have done is that they have tried to target the people personally, okay, whether it is through emails or whatever. So Trump frequently portrayed himself as a political outsider who would drain the swamp in Washington. Okay, drain the swamp in Washington is a slogan which he had used in its speech. It basically means that, it's a metaphor which is used where he has said that, it is his duty to prevent these lobbyists or, these bureaucrats from their own self-interest. He would try to basically finish this in terms of, selfishness which is there in these lobbying, and he will try to establish a fair administration. Okay, so this slogan which he has used is drain the swamp is done on this basis. He used direct and simple language to connect with the dissatisfied voters, particularly the working class, whites in Rust Belt. Okay, now this is again targeted messaging of audience. Now why this Rust Belt is used, let's just take a, going background to this is that from New York and these all Illinois and these centrally located South Carolina, all these centrally located, states, in particularly United States of America, were belts where you had lot of industries. Okay, people were in blue uniform there, they were working in industries and they were the manufacturers. But over the period of time, what has happened, that this has led to a decline, and we see that a lot of manufacturing has been now imported from other countries to US. So, Trump's message was basically to tell the world that, I will, revive this, our industries will be revived, and that is why he used this concept of Rust Belt and targeted those people who were basically have, left manufacturing or have closed their industries in order for revival, okay, or for that matter, in order to ensure that the employment will again be generated. Okay. His populist rhetoric emphasized on national sovereignty, immigration control, and economic protectionism, such as encapsulated in the slogan that is "Make America Great Again." Okay, so again, now he has used, national sovereignty, immigration control. You have seen that even during his tenure between 2017 and 2021, and again when he has come to the president or he has become the president again, he has basically tried to focus on immigration again and again, and trying to tell Americans, particularly the citizens of that country, that I'm going to deport all the illegal immigrants or people who have tried to take your jobs. And that is why he's trying to establish a certain kind of nationalist attitude there, and on those ideological lines he's tried to use slogans that make America great again, or try to influence these people. Okay. The next is anti-elite and anti-institutional posture, which is basically he is against these all elites and particularly who are these lobbyists, whether they are particularly belonging to certain kind of community. They are basically being challenged through Trump's tenureship, when he basically mentioned that he challenges the traditional institutions such as media, which he labels as fake news, intelligence community, and even parts of his own administration. Okay, he bypassed established political norms, appealing directly to his social-based Twitter or campaign-style rallies and conservative media outlets. Okay, so if you remember, he mostly a lot of channels who criticized him, he often considered them as fake news. That is why he comes on Twitter and handles it himself. Also, he has used particularly try to curb certain kind of intelligentsia, particularly those students who were, have come to America to study from abroad, have been again deported on the basis that, they're trying to be a part of the protests against particularly, the Trump administration. So that is why we see particularly, that this kind of methodology which he uses is basically one established on the ideological lines of nationalism, make great America great again. Also in terms of like he has tried to use populist idea, that he is a popular leader in order to establish, his kind of say authority, in people's mind, or the transactional leader he basically, strives to achieve particularly. So next is basically transaction and CEO style decision making. Yeah. Now we know that Trump is basically has come from the background that he was a businessman. He is a businessman rather. So he's tried to apply how business works in the government, with government policies as well. Okay. So he has basically adopted a transactional approach to governance, emphasizing on deals and loyalty, and for his personal benefit, which is basically the emotional angle is kept aside. It is basically on the basis of how economically any particular say deal is beneficial for particularly America. On those basis he has tried to basically build up on deals, or for that matter loyalties. So if you remember that there was a time when America basically pulled all its funding from WHO, because it said that it is only America who is basically funding WHO. Why not all the members contribute equally? Okay, and the same thing he did with the NATO as an organization, where he basically believed that why America should be putting in all the efforts in any organization, and why are all other members basically not contributing as America does. Okay, so all these particularly narratives was made in order to show that he is a businessman and he's here to basically build loyalties and do business like a CEO, rather than a political leader particularly. Okay, so his focus was on results over process. As I told you, he viewed foreign and domestic policy through a deal making lens. Okay, he often disregarded diplomatic protocol, favoring personal diplomacy, as seen in his precedented meetings with North Korea's President Kim Jong-un. And also we saw a certain kind of authoritarian tendencies, okay, where he was basically trying to establish personal loyalty over institutional expertise, and he also have a lot of clashing with advisors, and he was firing officials. As I told you, his leadership style is displayed as centralizing and unilateral traits, such as excessive use of executive orders and attempts to override any checks and balances. Okay, now this has also happened within when there is a judiciary or when there is a parliament there. Generally we have seen that the president is trying to override them by his own decisions, because we know that the president is very powerful in America and that he is trying to do it through his authority. Okay. The last thing particularly about Trump's leadership skills are that it is media centric. It basically, he believes in social media dominance, where he uses the digital platforms like Twitter and Instagram to mobilize his own supporters as well as attack his opponents there. He has basically redefined this communication in terms of traditional media through filters, where basically there's a controlled messaging happening. It is, for example, there is particularly, he has to address a nation. So rather than going live, he goes on, controlled media that can be edited, particularly the traditional form. Okay. Next is particularly, Trump styles of performance drawing from his reality television experience. That is The Apprentice. Now, he was also part of a particular series called The Apprentice, and that is why he's used, you see him sometimes mimicking, sometimes, giving a joke, and, using certain kind of slogans and symbols in order particularly to, consolidate some kind of identity based politics, where he's trying to accommodate all the citizens together in the nationalist ideology, as I told you. Okay. Then is particularly, his nationalist and decisive identity politics. As I mentioned earlier, that he has this idea of America First doctrine, that is, America should be placed first, and that is why, he withdrew from agreements like Paris Climate Accord, Iran nuclear deal, which was basically earlier signed between Obama and, Iran. Particularly domestically also, he has basically tried to do it by putting a ban on travel on Muslim majority countries. So this was all used as, a nationalist drive or identity politics here. It has led to basically polarization, where he has used his rhetoric on issues like immigration, race relations, and law enforcement. Okay. This was basically also done, if you remember, that when after 2021, when Trump lost and Joe Biden came, there was a riot in particularly Washington DC, and his supporters went and tried to destroy the property, the presidential property in Capitol, and that is what we basically try to see, that how he has created a certain kind of a lobby for himself, where he has created supporters that would support him irrespective, okay, based on nationalist attitude or populism or whatever you want to name it, but that has been used for his own benefit. Okay, so rather than a transformational leader, he's regarded as a transaction leader. The next particularly and the last thing is leadership under crisis, where we saw that there was during COVID, he was not able to handle responses, and there was a lack of proper information given by him itself. He was not in favor of promotion of wearing mask or washing hands. So again, we saw that during crisis times, he was not considered to be a very good leader. Okay. The analysis of his particular, leadership is that it is transactional, and though it is charismatic, but he believes in short-term loyalty over long-term governance stability. And particularly, he is, it's important that, he has used this communication in terms of, for the future democratic leadership by using digitalization more than the traditional methods of communicating. Okay, so that is exactly what Donald Trump's leadership style focuses on. The next is Barack Obama's leadership style, which is basically based on pragmatism, empathy, and oratory skills. Okay, now we all know that rather than emotional side, Obama has always tried to maintain how he basically view the situation, whether it requires an empathetic communication, whether it requires certain kind of pragmatism. So he has basically tried to build his personality or his leadership as distinctive style, which is a blend of empathy, pragmatism, and intellectualism, as well as inspirational communication. Okay, so how he has able to do that? First, let's discuss about his transformational and visionary leadership, which is basically he has worked for the society. There, the vision has been reforming the society rather than for his own selfish interest. So he has used, slogans or symbols like hope, change, yes, we can, in order to develop, a unifying vision of America. So we know that Barack Obama was basically an African American. For the first time, he had become a president, and that is why it was important that he as a leader should try to disregard or finish discrimination, the racial discrimination which is there in America. And that is why he has used this slogans that yes we can, hope, particularly to draw towards a visionary America. Okay. Second is empowerment and inclusion, which is basically talking about how leadership should be inclusive. It should basically empower everybody, at the same time try to bring each and every person of the country into a domain which would benefit them. Okay. Now this was basically done by his Affordable Care Act called Obamacare. This is basically talking about certain kind of health insurance, and how he basically tries to review these insurance company who was basically one, people who did not had insurance were asked to basically take health insurance, and secondly all these premiums which were so high, this particular act brought those premiums low so they can be made affordable to the common masses. Okay. The next is particularly empathetic and emotional intelligent leadership. Okay. Again, his emotional appeal, his response to crisis. Okay. So one of the example was Charleston church shooting. Now what happened here? Charleston is basically a church in South America, and it is regarded as a church of African Americans. And there was a person who went there and shooted 9 to 10 African Americans who died at that time. So during this particular incident, what Obama, when he was giving a eulogy, a speech, he sang with the choir there, Amazing Grace. Now this was basically try to tell you that he stands with these people. There's a blend of personal authenticity and national mourning. He basically was a consoler in chief. So again, in crisis does not mean it's a war or it's a pandemic, but it also means these small incidences where you see the leader standing with you. Okay. So his connection with the public was based on empathy, which allowed to connect with diverse audience, youth, the minorities, and even international leaders. We all know that Obama became very accepted or very loved leader across the globe. We also saw him coming to India, and we saw that how people across the world were basically praising him for his emotional appeals. Okay. The next is the oratorical and leadership and storytelling. This was also done by Trump and Zelensky. How is Obama different here? Because basically he belongs himself from a very basic middle class family, and that is why he has used that to the advantage of basically connecting with the middle class as well. Okay. So his narration, which was a Democratic National Convention speech in 2004, launched him into a national prominence, which exemplifies his inclusive rhetoric and vision of a united America. Okay. So this particularly, the speech he used was basically trying to tell him how he is from a very small middle class family, and that is why, he was able to have a communication at a very basic and on an emotional side. Okay. So the rhetoric here was basically used, the methodology here was used about promotion of his humility, of his emotional intelligence. Okay. Rather than he being a hero, rather than he trying to establish populism. Okay. Next is strategic framing. This mostly you will find that most of the leaders have used, whether it was Zelensky, whether it was Trump, whether it is Obama. His particularly, speeches promote certain kind of moral reasoning, historical references, and calls for a civic duty. Mostly of whether it is, Obamacare, or whether it is basically the Charleston church, firing which happened there. All these, the kind of retaliation he gives, whether it is through speech, it is basically done on the morality basis, on a humility basis. Okay. Rather than, saying that, America stands with you or whatever. Rather than, strategically framing himself as a hero in that particular situation, he has tried to use humility as one of his fortes. Okay. Next is calm and composed crisis management, as we say, saw during Obama and Trump's presidency. We see that, during Trump's presidency in terms of COVID-19. It was not tackled very nicely in America, but when we talk about crisis management of Obama, we can take a very good example of Osama bin Laden as to how, he was killed in a very, say structured manner, or it was carried in a very swift manner, and one day the news came to the television. Okay, so this kind of leadership shows certain kind of calmness, resilience and deliberation. Also during global crises like, Russia-Ukraine tensions. This is not before when the war was actually there. This is before that. The Syrian civil war was there, and how Obama particularly used international diplomacy to divert the events particularly is a very good example of showing how calm and composed he is during the crisis management. Okay, he is a pragmatic and policy-oriented leader. Why? Because of his Dodd-Frank Act, which was basically during your 2008 financial crisis. How particularly these financial crisis was basically handled during that time. Affordable Care Act, I have already explained how he was in favor of clean energy during Paris Climate Accord. All are these policies which are basically his achievements. His negotiation policy and also compromise could be seen during nuclear deal with Iran, where all the sanctions which were there on Iran was basically removed, and this kind of leadership ensured certain kind of long term benefits rather than short term benefits at that time. So when we talk about Obama and Trump's comparative analysis, this is basically how the different lies, whether it is on the basis of their vision, on the basis of their leadership style, their communication, their decision making, how efficient they are, how swift they are, also how change oriented they are. Okay, so this is just a comparison, and this is just for you to read. I have already explained you most of this while we were basically analyzing them. The next very important leader is Mahatma Gandhi. Now, since this class was about analyzing global leaders, but why we take Mahatma Gandhi into picture is that he is not just a leader in India. He is also regarded as a leader in many countries, particularly America as well. Okay, so Mahatma Gandhi is not regarded as a populist leader, okay, or he is not regarded as a leader who was basically trying to influence the voters, or who was basically trying to have some kind of self-interest involved. He was a leader where he did not even wanted to become the leader in the first place. He was basically has always been showing himself as just a part of the common population. Okay, so that is why we basically study Mahatma Gandhi as a spiritual leader rather than a political leader. Okay, so we all know that he is the father of the nation, and the kind of technique, his spiritual leadership, the components of his spiritual leadership basically endorsed ahimsa, that is non-violence, satyagrah, okay, rather than passive resistance. It was basically based on truth. All these are particularly, his qualities, whether it is self-discipline, whether it is Swaraj, which is self-rule. Now, most of us basically get confused that, we associate Swaraj with freedom from the Britishers, but Mahatma Gandhi's Swaraj was very different. It was based on spiritual freedom, which basically meant that overcoming your own vices. Okay, whatever ill you have within you is basically you have to overcome through say self-reliance, or discipline or truthness. Only then will you be able to attain Swaraj from the world. Okay, so that is why when we talk about Mahatma Gandhi's style of leadership, it was very much transformational, not for the world, but for each and every individual from within. And also he is regarded as a kind of a servant leader, as you just saw with Zelensky. Mahatma Gandhi is also regarded as a servant leader because he worked for each and every person. The concept of Sarvodaya, that each and every person standing at last should also be benefiting from particularly all these weather components, say truth, ahimsa. Following this, each and every particular person should be benefiting. Okay, the Swaraj should be such. So let's just focus on what his qualities as a spiritual leader were. it was basically rooted in Sarvodaya, as I told you, upliftment of all. He was a transformational leader because he focused on a vision of moral evolution and not just political freedom. Gandhi refused to be a populist leader. As I told you that, he did not want to be a popular leader. He was basically considered himself just as a normal part of common, population. And that is why if you see the symbols, he used, and it is not because he used, but it was rather inbuilt in him. So you will have to draw an analysis that, generally people use these symbols, for that matter, Zelensky using his military uniform to denote his stance. But with Gandhi particularly, it was not that he wanted people to, believe that he is trying to, stand with the country. He himself was a kind of a person like that, okay? So that is why Gandhi's, attire, whether he was wearing a dhoti of khadi particularly or abstaining himself from alcohol, all these things were not because of populist demand or why people wanted. It was basically a kind of a long-term social regeneration, okay, that regenerating the population entirely, okay. While the other leaders sometimes pandered to religious or caste-based identities, Gandhi consistently spoke against Hindu-Muslim division, and he challenged that all these identity-based practices should basically be ended, whether it was his support for the Harijans, whether it was basically trying to during the Khilafat movement, trying to bring the Hindu Muslims together. All this was basically trying to say that there is a certain kind of connectedness which we should basically establish, and that was his vision. So whenever even a movement like non-cooperation movement was at its height, he cancelled it, he stopped it. Why? Because of the Chauri Chaura incident, because it was going against his moral wills. So this proves that he is not a populist leader, okay? So he is a leader of conscience and not of crowd. As I told you, it did not matter to him what mass psychology was talking about him. It did not matter to him what the people were saying about him. It was basically based on his own discipline, on his own rules, on his own regulations, particularly his consciousness, which was a driving factor here, okay? So Mahatma Gandhi, when we talk about him particularly, he stands alone from the different leaders. Why? Because his idea was never to become a leader. His idea was basically to transform the society itself. So Mahatma Gandhi is particularly one of a leader who is considered to be leader. He has been assessed as his skills have been assessed over the period of time, but he himself was never in favor of he becoming so popular. It eventually happened that he became so popular, but he never used all these techniques, which is narrative framing or storytelling, or for that matter how he's trying to behave during crisis. It is only the people who made him so. He was never in favor of being a populist leader, and that is why we see that Mahatma Gandhi's concept of leadership is basically a spiritual leadership, which is spirituality is the driving force here rather than a political force, or rather than Swaraj as we talk about political freedom. Because at that time also, during national freedom struggle, there were a lot of leaders who were against Gandhi because of certain kind of principles he followed, but again he never left them. So a leader is somebody who is consistent in his particular intention, his vision, even if the world is criticizing him, okay? So that is another very important quality of a leader, that it is not that people will not criticize you, and it is not always that you have to influence everybody into making you a popular leader, but there has to be certain kind of derivation which needs to be set down or written, as Mahatma Gandhi wrote down, that leader should not be just about political leader or a leader of an organization. He could be a person very simple who is bringing about a change in the society. So I think this kind of analysis of whether it was global leaders or Mahatma Gandhi who had a global influence on leaders, be it on Martin Luther King Jr. or Nelson Mandela, he had that effect, okay? So that is an analysis of showing you how different different leadership qualities differ from each other, and you can always associate certain skills with these particular leaders apart from the skills what I have told you. Okay, and you're more than welcome to assess global leaders apart from the ones I have told you. It would be helpful for you to understand those concepts, those theories, those skills better when you basically analyze certain kind of leaders. And I think it would have been beneficial for you this class, and thank you.